Okay, let's get started. Welcome to this month's OpenAir Top Step presentation. Thank you for joining. Hope you get something out of today's session. Today's session is really around not my 5 favorite features, but 5 features of OpenAir that are rarely used, and we want to highlight, what the use case for those are, and how see if maybe they might benefit you. Maybe you didn't even know they were out there or existed. So hopefully you can walk away today with some new knowledge that you can take advantage of. All right, let's start. The first, the number 5, we're going to do this in backwards to forwards. Number 5 feature that you may not be aware of or is not very popular is conditional drop-down custom fields. Well, you might say, Ron, well, yes, that can be done with form permissions. And you're right, it can be done with form permissions. And most commonly, we do see it done with form permissions. But as most of you who are maybe OpenAir admins know, the more form permissions you put out there, the more complicated the management and the maintenance of those becomes. Is there an alternative for these conditional drop-downs? And the answer is yes. There is a feature to have in the custom fields. You can define a drop-down field with field values that drive the content of another field. So basically, you can build a tree, like a hierarchy almost, where you can say these values, and then these values are picked. These values become available in a secondary field. So the next slide, I'll show you what that looks like. But why would you turn this on, as we talked about? Well, again, it does save some from the complicated form permission rules that do require maintenance. It's just a set of related custom fields that you maintain, which can be a little more visual, a little more easier to manage. And it does give you some accuracy in being able to make sure that your custom fields are set up properly from the custom field section versus having to drill down into the permission rules. So, and then if I'm interested in this, how would I see this in my account? Well, there's a switch you would need to request from support that is enable the advanced custom field value editor and conditional associations. So this switch support we need to enable in your account, and then once fresh login, this is what you'll see. What will you see? So this looks like a drop-down field, like any other drop-down field in any account. However, when this feature is turned on, what happens is when you go to add values, you're not editing the values inside of the values text box. You get this pop-up that allows you to edit the values in this pop-up field. So you can, it's drag and drop and editable, so you could reorganize the drop-down values, which is nice. You can add here using this plus sign. You can double-click to update the verbiage, the spelling, or what have you, and go ahead, and then when you're ready, hit OK. Now, when you would then be able to go relate this drop-down field to another drop-down field, and when that occurs, now you get side by side. So here's my, for our example we're using today is contract type is our drop-down field, and we want to have, depending on what contract type you pick, tells you which project region is available in the selection. So in this example, it's all drag and drop. I can drag and say, when I pick T&M, these are the values. I drag them over. Internal, we say if internal is selected, then only these values are available in the conditional permission. So this gives you a nice, clean way to look at your permission tree at a high level, make changes, drag and drop, and it gives you some of those benefits of being able to maintain these. And as new values are added, you're not going into forms to update. You can just add them into the custom fields, and then just add the new values, drag and drop the values there, and call it a day. Again, could be a very cool, slick feature that might save you a little time on the management side, but very, very few customers actually take advantage of this. Number 4, allocation grids. So depending on when your OpenAir account was provisioned, you may or may not see allocation grid as an option in your custom fields. So what is an allocation grid? Well, the allocation grid is a custom field type that allows you to enter percentage values across different items. So let's use an example that will show you. We bring over opportunities from Salesforce into OpenAir at different stages of the sales process. And we want to be able to forecast based on the probability of the stage of that sales process. And so you could create a custom field on the project, and you could store the probability as a decimal. Then you have to go create a custom calc, and then you have to build reports that take that custom calc, and you're applying a detail field times a summary value. And there's some challenges with the reportability of being able to apply a detail field and a custom summary value together, getting it to properly show up on the report, getting it to properly summarize across multiple projects. So this is an alternative to being able to do that. So in my example here, I could have a custom field, and I could store the percentage using a probability value. And you can also, there's an option on the field to actually sum it to 100. And so, a situation might be where you might want to use this to say who's getting revenue credit for a particular project, and you may have different regions or different salespeople that you would select in the allocation grid and be able to assign a percentage for each one, but you want to force that total to be 100%. And so that would be a good case for using that checkbox. What does it do? So when you have this allocation grid custom field set up, it basically takes the percentage in the allocation field and it applies itself to all applicable custom summary values. You don't have to go in and create custom calcs. It does it for you. It actually creates it as a standard field so that you can just pull it into reports without you having to go in and worry about doing the calculation. How is the calculation going to show in the report? So it is, if you don't have it, it's generally deployed on newer versions of OpenAir. If you have an older version of OpenAir, you may not have it. There is a switch you can request to request the custom allocation grids. So what does it look like? So here I've got a picture of an allocation grid for sales probability. As we mentioned, we have different probabilities we want to store, and our value list is weighted value. So this is the list that's going to show in the grid, and then you assign, in this case, we would assign a percentage to the weighted value. Again, you could have multiple values in this list, and you see at the bottom of this form, here's where you can require that the values sum to 100%. But in our case, we're not going to force it to 100 because we're only using this for a single use case in a single value we want to generate from this field. So when we do that, we enter our percentage. In this case, it's showing at 100. And you can see the hint I have here for the users that they can put in. But this is what it would look like in the project form. This could be whatever the 30 or 50 or 70 in case scenario. But when you go to create reports, what you'll notice is for every company summary value field, you'll get a second field. And you'll see that it's basically a calculation of the weighted value times that value. So in this example, which I'm trying to project our overall pipeline for our opportunities that are in the system as projects, as well as our standard projects that are closed won that are set to 100%. So we can go in and we can grab our projected billing rules, and we can grab the value of weighted. So I could see in this report, I could see projected billing without the weighting, and then I can see projected billing with the weighting. And you see as a version for each currency. There's also, there's revenue, there's actual invoicing amounts. Every dollar amount that is available to be reported on has this clone of the allocation grid calculation. And you can see at the bottom here where you can tell you want to include, or if you don't want to see those weighted values in this case, or see the allocation grids, you can exclude those. So it would then go back to looking your normal company summary values that you would select. So a pretty cool feature, not often used, but it's got some pretty good power. I'll say the one downside of the allocation grid is you cannot upload to it. So you can't integrate to it, or you can't upload to it via Integration Manager. So I would say that's probably a gate, a big gate that we see where, I want to be able to set it through an integration, not set it manually. And unfortunately, it's a manually set field that you have to have. But if you're good with that and it's worth the output that you get from it, it can be a very powerful feature. All right, let's talk about timesheets. How often do we self-reject ourselves? Well, it's not a very PC word, but unfortunately, that's the terminology that OpenAir uses. Ever submit a timesheet by mistake? And then what do? You got to go bother somebody to reject it so that you can make the edits, add additional information before you're ready to submit it. If that's the case, and you want to give your users the ability to self-reject their own timesheet, there is a switch that allows you to set that, and then within the role, you can give that permission to the users. It is called self-reject, not recall. It is actually a recall, but it does put the timesheet in a rejected state for the user. And so the other option I wanted to highlight here is with timesheets, you can also do line item approval and line item rejection. We see this more often with expenses, but it is a good option for timesheets, and allows an approver to be able to say, oh, these are approved, these are not, and you can do those one at a time. There's also a switch that allows you to reject in bulk or approve in bulk at the line level. So another option that we don't see very often, but it is out there and it is available within the tool that you request, is a few switches that you can enable from OpenAir support to either allow the self-rejection or the line item rejection or multiple time line item rejection. So there's all three different switches that you would need to request. And again, it does give you some usability enhancements. So what does this look like? So I submitted my report, my timesheet report, and I meant to add another field, add another line, or I need to edit something, or I ended up working the weekend when I didn't expect to. If no one has approved it, that's the caveat. No one could have approved it at this point. You can go find that in the to approve section of the timesheets and find your timesheet, and then there is a reject option on the timesheet. And then that will move it back to a rejected state where you can then edit it like any other rejected timesheet and then resubmit it at the appropriate time. If you are an approver, project manager, and you're looking to approve, this is the old UI. Shows you what the approve or reject option are. It looks different in the current UI 4, but I didn't update the slide deck because I didn't want to screw up with the automation, quite honestly. But you get the idea. At a line level, you can auto approve. You can approve or you can reject at a line. If you do have the ability to do it all at once, you can select approve across multiple lines and then hit approve or reject in a multiple fashion. So it gives you that option. I snuck in a 3A because I felt like this is something we've seen recently, and not very many customers know it's available, but it does work. So one of the questions we get is, we like the line item rejection for timesheets, but can we go ahead and bill the lines that are approved? So even though the timesheet is split, you've got the requested line that's gone back, you've approved the remaining 3, the system still has the overall timesheet and marked in a submitted state. So it will still wait for that other rejection to happen, especially if you're using rejoin. So there's an option that says, okay, I've rejected this line and I've approved these 3. They've moved forward, but the timesheet's going to sit in limbo till the rejected line gets approved. Then it will rejoin everybody to one timesheet, back into one timesheet. So the benefit is you have one timesheet at the end of the approval process to accommodate. However, the downside of it is the 3 lines that were approved are in limbo. You can't start billing. And the number one reason we see people want to use this timesheet is to be able to push it through to invoicing, and having that rejoin process interferes with that ability. So what you can do to solve that is you can enable a switch called allow project approved time to be billed. And then you have to, if it's enabled, you have to disable the rejoin option. So again, they're mutually exclusive switches. And if you do that, disable those 3 lines in my fictitious timesheet will get pushed on. You can run the billing rules, create the charges, put them on an invoice, despite the fact that one of the lines or more than one of the lines that were rejected are sitting still in an open rejected status. So again, pretty cool. The downside is you will have 2 timesheets for that week. So it could be a little squirrely with your reporting. But the benefit is you will have the ability to start the approval process and the invoicing process sooner without having to wait for that rejected time. So threw that in. Since it's related to the line item rejection, wanted to throw that in. It's something that we've seen recently and we've tested and worked with clients on, and it seems to work well in this scenario. Bookings created from task assignments. So this has been around a bit. I don't think very many customers know about it. There are a few things to consider before this is something you want to turn on. What is it though? So if you go in and set up your project task structure, you're given a project, you go ahead and set up your tasks, you got start and end dates, you got assigned users or assigned generic users to your project plan. You can actually take that data and you can turn on a feature that allows you to take that data and create an initial set of bookings. Now, a couple of things to consider. It only creates the initial set. So managing it at that point forward, you're managing it in the bookings. There's no correlation back to the task. So that's something to think about, but that's not any different than if you were to go in to create your bookings from scratch based on your project needs. It's the same concept. It does also require that you gets enabled project approval workflow for bookings. So what that does is enables, where you've got open, submitted, requested, approved, rejected bookings versus just a booking in a list view with a booking type. Now, you can work around that a bit. You can set the approval process for the approval to the submitter. So it'll kind of mimic an auto approve. It's like doing a self-approval for a timesheet. It's always going to go from creation, submission to approval, but you still will have all the different stages visible in the resource module. So something to consider. But if you're not okay with that and you like the fact of being able to take your project plan details and create the bookings / schedules automatically, it does do the job. And so this is what it looks like in the old UI. Again, I didn't have an account to show the new UI, but basically there's a big button that shows up in the view, the project task view. When you click create it, gives you a confirmation. Are you sure you want to create it? You click OK. It takes the task, it confirms what's been created, takes your task assignment details, and generates an initial set of bookings. Number one in your hearts, number one, and I actually do really like this feature, and I find myself recommending it quite a bit and helping implement it. Here's the scenario, right? You've got a group of salaried individuals, and they've been assigned a cost in their user record, and you're efforting to get accurate project profitability. And so the salaried folks are paid for 40 hours a week, they're paid for 8 hours a day. And when they exceed that, their time and their cost goes up above that threshold. So you end up getting an exaggerated cost for an employee that works greater than 40 hours a week or 8 hours a day, consistently over a month period. And so customers are like, well, I don't pay them by the hour, I pay them a salary, so their cost is off, and I need a cost adjustment. What's the best way to achieve that? So there's actually an automated way to do this in OpenAir. It's hidden, I'll tell you that. It's not something obvious, and it is available in all accounts. It's not there's no switch available. It is tied to an advanced report called historical utilization. Very few of us use these advanced utilization reports because it's easier just to create a custom calc and create a company summary report. You don't have any limitations on how to stack the report by subtotal. So, most of the time with utilization reports, we just create it from scratch, not using one of these advanced reports. However, for this purpose, for this very straight purpose of adjusting costs, the only way to do it is in using this historical utilization report. So you would basically create a utilization report that achieves a utilization calculation that works for your organization. And then you would pick a period for which you want to run that report. Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? Generally, we see it monthly as the most common option. Because you could have some weeks where you're under or over, and so being able to do it at a monthly basis seems to be make a lot of sense. But there's no reason you couldn't do it more often or less often. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to calculate the utilization by person, and it's going to display that utilization in the report. So let's say for a given period, I was 120% utilized. I'm a salaried employee, and I want to be able to adjust my hourly costs. So when I multiply 120 times my hourly rate cost, it calculates the amount of equivalent to if I'd have worked 40 hours or regular time for that period, 100% utilization. So what it does is it will generate a report. You can remove people you don't want to adjust from the report via filters. And then once you get a good report that shows you what you want, who needs to be adjusted, you can click a button, and I'll show you this on the next slide, and you can automatically go ahead and update this. Now, one thing to note, it is only available for the primary loaded costs. So it only takes level 1 or level 0 if you're uploading costs. It only takes that primary. So it does not. You cannot do this with secondary or tertiary costs. So as everyone probably knows, you can have up to 3 costs on a user record. So think through that if you're looking to use this, that your primary cost is the one that works with this report. So again, old UI, apologies. Hopefully all of you know you're going to be forced to move to the new UI next year, early next year. So if you need some help, let us know. Shameless plug. But under advanced reports, you have this percent utilization, historical utilization report. And then when you go in and set the report based on your historical utilization calculation, we see our longtime founder, Jody, And we decided to run this on a weekly basis. And Jody, as in true Jody fashion, she worked 135% utilization for that week. Well, Jody's salaried, so we need to do something here, or Jody's hourly cost is going to be too much for that week. So when we click on the different on the tab here, you'll see there is a click here to adjust the user's loaded costs. So again, this is only available in this historical utilization report. So once I'm ready to go, I've reviewed my report, everyone I've got included. And one thing to note, if someone was 100, leave them in the report, because you'll have a monthly amount for them or weekly amount for them that's equal to their hourly rate. And so that if next year, if you give them a raise, and you're reporting in the past, you still have their rate for that month. It just happens to be the same as their cost was that month. You're not picking up their new increased cost that's going to go into past months. So there's a benefit to leaving the 100%ers in. I have some customers that increase the cost. So let's say someone was at 80% and you want to increase their cost because you want to make sure that the full amount of their salary is applied to all the projects that they worked on. So you could actually leave in the under 100% folks as well, because all it is a simple math calculation. It's taking the hourly cost. Well, before I do that, let me show you. Basically, when you click this link, you get this option, and you can click Run Cost Adjustments. I'll show you what that does. It takes her costs and it applies it to the utilization. And let's say you do it and then you want to do it again. So you can do it and you can say, oops, I made a mistake, or oops, I want to redo it. And so you can override existing costs. So it does give you the ability to add as well as override your existing costs. And then it will give you this window will come up. It'll show you what has been adjusted. And if you go into the Jody user account, I can see that her standard current cost is 90, but for the week set within the report. So it's taken the dates within the period you're reporting on, dividing that 90 by the 1.3563, and it is coming up with an adjusted hourly cost for that week. So now if I run reports on Jody for the week of 3/3/19, I get 100 and whatever hours that equates to, or I think it's probably more like 50, 60 hours, and times this rate, and I get the equivalent as if she had 40 hours at her $90 rate. So it gives you nice, clean costing. It's not onerous from an administrative. You just have to run the report, evaluate the report, and then click a box, and automatically it takes care of everything. And another note is, you might say, well, I want to be able to report on the current costs in some reports, but I want to be able to report on the adjusted costs in others. No problem. OpenAir stores both values in the system. So you have values in a company summary report that will only look at the current, no matter whether you're doing adjustments or not. And then you have values in the company summary that look at the adjusted values. And we'll calculate that. You can actually also do them side by side in reporting if you need to. So you get the full reporting, you get additional reporting, and you get nice, clean profitability reports. All right, so got questions. Hopefully everyone learned something today. If there's things we didn't cover today that you wonder if possible, we're here to help. So please reach out, and probably myself or someone from my team, happy to get on a call and talk to. A lot of times we have customers that come to us and say, gosh, I need to do this. Is this, can you guys build a script for us? Well, you know what? You don't need a script. There's standard functionality available to you. You just didn't know about it. So let's go down the path of standard functionality until we determine standard functionality doesn't work. So we try to avoid over customizations by making sure that we're aware of all the different switches and ways OpenAir can be used, and help educate our clients to that effect. Again, we thank you for following Top Step. couldn't do this. We couldn't do what we do without you. Again, our website will have this webinar, as well as all the webinars we've done over many, many years. We tweet, we send out tips on a regular basis. So hopefully you guys are receiving those. We have a weekly, monthly newsletter. We're now doing a script of the month in our monthly newsletter, which is pretty cool. So again, if you're not subscribing to that, please hit our website. We also have a LinkedIn for OpenAir users as well. So appreciate everyone's time. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.